let's try this again. So it's going to be a little bit more shorter than expected. So I had some difficulties on Instagram earlier. Maybe someone learned their lesson for trying to call me during a live. So anyways, right now you see a lot of people confused. You see a lot of chaos right now. You see a lot of people yelling, screaming, kicking, cussing, fussing, griping, complaining, moaning, all these other things about what's going on right now in Venezuela. Well, if you'd been paying attention, especially those of you who follow me and or your friends and family, you should have been listening to your friends and family who follow me. It's real simple. 45-47 is a visual that President Trump gave April the 2nd, 2023. All right, real simple. He put this on there. It's hard to believe now that we're talking about April will be 3 years that you had this visual put right in front of you, 45-47. I'm supposed to be in New York in April, all right? Somewhere, I can't remember what days, but let's just say the 25th through the 28th. I'll be in New York. Well, why would I put on my social media that I'll be there April 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th? Why not just put a dash in between and say, hey guys and gals, I'm going to be in New York City, April 25th through the 29th. Why would I type out April 25th, April 26th, April 27th, April 28th, April 20th? Why would I do that? We have punctuation for a reason. 45-47. What is in the middle of 45 and 47? 46. And President Trump just put out a post December the 2nd, 2025. Not that long ago. It's been a full year now. All jokes aside. December the 2nd, 2025. That all legal documents, executive orders, proclamations, treaties, pardons, legal documents, etc., by quote-unquote Joe, are terminated. No legal effect. No legal effect just so happens to have a Latin term for it. It's called ad void initio, which means never existed. So if you were to go to Google and say, hey, if a future president were to try to revise something that was ad void initio, what would happen? It says it can't, because the law shows that never existed lawfully. So you can't revise something that never existed lawfully. If you also put in there, if you ask Google about this scenario, if you went in there and said, hey, Siri, Alexa, whomever, but Google is the best bet because it pulls from all sources now. If you went in there and said, let's see, how would you word it? If you worded it that, okay, if a president terminated every single executive order, proclamation, treaty, national emergency, legal document by a past president, what would happen? And it says, in law terms, chaos and pandemonium would happen. Because when you have an executive order, national emergency, etc., and you have certain people who are doing what? Enforcing those, if you went and took out 4 years worth, or even 8, but 4 is all you need, even if you took out 1 year's worth, it would be chaos. Why isn't there chaos? Now, to the average person, they think they're seeing chaos, but that's not chaos. So, how did we get here? A lot of you women out there, females, ladies, right? You always, you jank on and you make fun of guys who do what? On Christmas Day, which we just went through, but even on birthdays, anytime you get a gift, right, it requires some form of construction, right? What do most guys do? Oh, well, I got this. They get their tool set out, correct. Or it comes with assorted items, right, with a little tool set most of the time for things today. They put a little wrench in there or a little Allen tool or whatever it is, right? And what do most guys do, ladies? They don't look at the instructions, do they? Oh, no. It looks like this, and it looks like this, and it looks like that, and I believe this goes here. And pretty soon, you're going to have a jacked up bicycle, aren't you? You're going to have a jacked up play set. You're going to have a jacked up kitchen set for your child. And you have to unassemble that. And ladies, what do you end up doing? Because the guy threw everything down, he got frustrated, got mad, and stormed off. You take the instructions out, you lay them right there, and you go step by step by step by step. And then pretty soon you have a what? You have a play set. You have a bicycle. You have whatever it is that came with instructions. That's why so many Republicans, conservatives, look just as atrocious right now as Democrats and liberals do. So how did we get here? 2017 to 2021, President Trump said, we're taking the power out of D.C., giving it back to you, the people. That's when all these unique executive orders and national emergencies were invoked by President Trump, which was a resetting of the legislative branch. President Trump came in there and started doing all this stuff. I mean, he was hitting these Democrats and liberals so hard they couldn't even blink. Right? Fundamental resetting of the Declaration of Independence. It's a resetting of the legislative branch. 2021 to 2025 was a resetting of the executive branch. That's why there was a continuity government invoked. The Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. All right, all this I've already covered. Not going to cover it again on this one because there's multiple videos for that. 2025 to present day is a resetting of the judicial branch. That's why it's judge this, judge that. Judge blocked this, judge did this, judge did that. District court this, appeals court that. Third Circuit this, Fourth Circuit that. Fifth Circuit this, Sixth Circuit. Judge, 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 judge. Court, 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 court. That's all that's dominating right now. And even with Maduro, where is that going? To what? Court. Right? So that's why you got to pay attention. You got to know what matters. And so many people, by design, still stew on and chew on what? Propaganda and drama. If you're going to call President Trump a war criminal, if you're going to use terms like war criminal, impeachment, violation of international law, violation of Geneva Convention, you probably want to know the law that applies to war. Probably want to know that. Because so many Democrats and liberals, they just use the term Constitution. They don't even know what the Constitution says. All they know is the word Constitution. Oh, I love the Constitution. I'm upholding the Constitution. He's violating the Constitution. You don't even know. The Constitution is not what you want to use with the term violating. President Trump is nowhere near violating the Constitution. The Constitution, though, mostly is a prescription. It tells Congress what they're to do, the judges what they're to do, and the president what he's to do. The laws that have been passed all these years under multiple Congresses, that's what matters. So if anyone's going to say against the law, then you'd have to explain why is it still in the law books. If it's still in the law books, guess what? It can be done. It can be enforced. It can be used with an order, with something that is an enforcement, an order, executive order, national emergency. That's why it pays in other laws and orders. Abraham Lincoln said that a bad law should be strictly enforced, double enforced. That way people can do what? See it and then do what? Dissent. Meaning, we don't like that. What are you people doing? A lot of people out there, you just whining, griping, fussing, complaining, but you're not even forming a sentence structure that even makes sense, first off, for anybody to hear a structural argument. cussing, yelling, screaming, fussing, griping. War criminal, impeach this, oh, this. None of that's structural whatsoever. Because I can show you by laws and orders how President Donald John Trump is nowhere remotely close to a war criminal, and how you've been watching a strategic operation, bipartisan, by multiple people on both sides of the aisle. No matter what they've been saying, no matter what, that's distraction pieces, because you're watching a strategic operation, a strategic military operation. Now, the only way you're going to be able to read it, know it, study it, is to what? Read it, know it, study it. That's how you're going to be able to comprehend it. For those out there who say it's hogwash and BS and, oh, you're just dragging this on, you're still not doing what? You're not reading or studying, because if you were reading and studying, you would all of a sudden hit a 360 and go, holy crap, it's all right here. And you would quit your fussing, griping, complaining, and looking like a moron. Because that's what you look like. Anyone who's saying it's hogwash, conspiracy theory, you're a moron. Military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, paired with the way they pair with federal, they're not conspiracy theories. You're a conspiracy idiot. All right? So December the 2nd, President Trump specifically said in a post that all of quote-unquote Joe's everything terminated. Very key. That's the dash. All right. On January the 2nd, just 2 days ago, Fox News and a few others put out an article about Maduro. And it said he's ready to make a deal. Now, how do they know the day before what people are now yelling, kicking, complaining, fussing, calling President Trump all these names? Think about it. None of these people knew anything was coming on January the 3rd. I posted this article January the 2nd, and I said, Maduro is ready to make a deal. Oh, here you go, libtards, all in your face, another loss for you. Now just think about that for a moment. Just pause and think about it. The whole world wasn't in chaos right now with the Republicans who are looking like morons, looking like libtards. Oh, he's starting a war, blah, blah. You're a moron if you say that. There's no other word for you. You don't want to be called a moron? Stop acting like one. Stop looking like one. He ain't started anything. He's finishing everything. Just on the 2nd, before anybody knew what was about to take place with Maduro being captured, on January the 2nd, that shows this is strategically planned, article pops out. Maduro is ready to make a deal. If you knew what Venezuela tied to, you'd be licking your chops and smiling, especially if you're Republican conservative. If you're a Republican conservative that knows what you're supposed to know. Venezuela, Smartmatic, Dominion Systems. They were a regime put into place. Obama, Hillary, Bill, Bush. So all the libtards right now are yelling, calling President Trump a war criminal, saying he needs impeachment, all these other things. All right, what about quote-unquote Joe? Quote-unquote Joe, Buttigieg, and Obama, what about their tweets? But especially quote-unquote Joe and Buttigieg calling Maduro a tyrant, saying he needed to step down, needed to let the democratic process take its place. They're the people who put him there. That's what's awesome about all this. They're the people who put him there. They're the people who kept him there. Oh, he's a tyrant. He needs to step down and all these other things. And then old quote-unquote Joe saying President Trump favored Maduro. Thugs like Maduro. Old quote-unquote Joe called Maduro a thug. That aged well, didn't it? Ah, I love when they do as I say, not as I do. Crap hits their face. and how people can't see that. See, if you would just know what you need to know and forget about all the chaos and the drama and all the other stuff, just know what you need to know, all this shows you the dash. Right? All this makes up the dash. You don't need to know all this other stuff. So then Obama actually tweeted a congratulations to the lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize. And she's the one, she said she wanted to see Maduro taken alive and put into jail. You need to get a read all about what she said. Oh boy, does it ever backfire on the libtards and the Democrats, the Demorats. That's all they are. So then old Bernie Sanders put up a long post. Said that Congress needs to reassert themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, there's you another term. Reassert and assert. Completely different terms. Synonym, anonym, right? Assert, reassert. He said reassert themselves. He's giving you a innuendo to something. Well, what did he use after that? He said Congress must do what? Pass an amendment to the War Powers Act to do what? End this. Well, what are we ending, Bernie? What are we ending, Bernie? In what, Bernie? The War Powers Resolution Act. Now, you've heard me say the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973. You've heard me talk about the Act and the amendment on December the 20th, 2019. And you've heard me say Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 how many times? Over and over and over and over again. And they're just now bringing up, in the last month and a half, they're just now bringing up the term War Powers Resolution to you, the people. You know how long I've been talking about this? And it's not about me. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm making a point, though, that you could have already known this. You could have already known this. The congressional authorization has been in place since December the 20th, 2019. So when you hear people say out there, oh, he has to have a congressional authorization, he's acting against the international law and all the Geneva Convention, there's already a congressional authorization, you morons. I love the word moron. Every time I hear it, I think of Home Alone. Hey, you morons! You guys give up or you're thirsty for more? It's just so fitting for this very moment. Venezuela. Do you know that Obama is the one who opened the national emergency, declared the national emergency with Venezuela? Executive Order 13692, March the 8th, 2015. You know those 8 wars that President Trump said he's ended? Majority of them were in executive orders with national emergencies by whom? Obama, all the way back to Jimmy Carter. He's not starting any wars, you morons. He's ending them. Ukraine. Obama had 3 executive orders with the national emergency in the month of March alone in 2014, and one of those in December. 4 executive orders in 2014 alone. Obama with Ukraine. Obama had an executive order with Yemen. Where were all of you people yelling? None of you were yelling about Yemen. We were bombing the hell out of Yemen last spring. Nobody said anything about that. Why weren't you yelling? If you're going to yell about one, you got to yell about them all. That shows that people are led by what? Paid opposition, drama, propaganda, and what you're told to yell about on both sides of the aisle. Because nobody was yelling about Yemen. We were bombing the hell out of Yemen. We were running multiple operations in Yemen. Nobody said anything about Yemen. That shows right there that most people don't know what you're supposed to know. All of these wars that President Trump talks about, they're in executive orders with national emergencies from Obama back to Jimmy Carter. From 2017 to 2021 was a capitulation tour. President Trump was the first to go into the forbidden city of China in 500 plus years. He walked into North Korea, first president to do so. Remember that nuclear war that Hillary said that President Trump was going to start with his temperament? Where's that nuclear war? All he did was become the first sitting president to walk into North Korea. Remember the sword dance and the sword, Saudi Arabia? I mean, we could sit here and name over and over all the things that President Trump did that no one's ever done before. Those were capitulations. You know who did not capitulate? Venezuela, Yemen, Iran, Ukraine. You know who all has ties to those? Obama, because of executive orders. Joe Biden, the real Joe Biden, because of Vice President and Hunter Biden. Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, they had children working in Ukraine. This stuff is so easy when you know what you're supposed to know. And you forget about all the drama and the propaganda and the noise and all these other podcasters and all these blue checks out there who are just nothing but algorithm whores. That's all they are. They don't care about you. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care about your emotions. And they can't care anyway. You know why they can't care? Because they don't even know what they're supposed to know. It is beyond me how my pages don't have 5, 10, 15 million. Not that I want it. It's just for the fact that I'm the only one who outlines everything you need to know and helps you have a productive life daily where you can have more time to yourself, freedom of mind, clarity of mind, peace, calmness in your heart. Because I show you everything you need to know, and I weed out all the things you don't need to know. On my time and on my dime. To this day, my pages are not monetized, so you can check that out. So all these people yelling, war criminal, violation of international law, violation of Geneva Convention, congressional authorization. He has a congressional authorization. Now what other people will do is say this. I've heard this before. Well, that was way back in 2019. Doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen. That's the law. That's how the law works. But if you'd have been paying attention, there's two things that tie this in. There's two different ways to do it. So you got to listen and you got to pay attention. The first thing is President Trump just now validated it. December the 2nd, 2025 in his post where he said all things by quote-unquote Joe are terminated, which would cause calamity, chaos, pandemonium if that were real that President Trump did that and if those were real. But they weren't, which is the dash. That's your visual. That was your validation right there of the dash. Now you got to go back to December the 20th, 2019. So see, 2017 to 2021 was a resetting of the legislative branch. President Trump put in all these Title 10 and Title 32 orders. They're still active to this day. Quote-unquote Joe did not have one single Title 10 or Title 32 order, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing that dash and that December the 2nd post, which now says terminated for the people who thought it was real, needed to hear it that way, even though they weren't real. But the only thing that quote-unquote Joe had was a continuation, meaning like the troops were already in Texas at the border. Quote-unquote Joe added troops to it. It wasn't a new Title 10 order or a new Title 32 order. Quote-unquote Joe didn't have a single foundational Title 10 or Title 32 order, which are military orders, whatsoever. No Title 32 funding by the government to governor who invoked Title 32. No Title 10, which is presidential. None whatsoever on paper. Military orders are not continuation orders, meaning they don't continue from president to president. That's why Congress has to have a what? Authorization. In 1973, Congress made it to where a president had to declare a national emergency and in 48 hours tell them to use the military. The president had 60 days to use the military and a 30-day wind-down period, a total of 90 days. After that 90 days, Congress had to authorize military use after that 90 days. Now, if you struggle with this, you need to pause that when this video is on a link and go back and listen to that again. Because your congressional authorization is what everybody's yelling about out there. It don't matter that it was way back here in 2019. It's there. It has not been terminated, has not been revoked. And every single military order that majority of the military operating under right now as we speak and operated throughout 21 to 25 were under President Trump's Title 10 and Title 32 orders from 2018, 2019, and 2020. December the 20th, 2019, a Democrat-controlled House of Representatives. Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. A Democrat-controlled House of Representatives and a Republican-controlled Senate passed the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, which puts Section 1550 into the War Powers Resolution. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That's your congressional authorization that President Trump has. And it was bipartisan passed. Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. This is why it's key to know. In that Chapter 33, which is, so Title 50 is your national security. All right, Title 50 is your war and national defense. Chapter 33 is your War Powers Resolution Act itself. It's housed, it's recorded under Title 50. In Section 1550, it specifically tells you, in the codification, it tells you that this is temporarily in here, meaning it's not for future presidents. This is temporarily in here as part of the NDAA, but it's recorded in the War Powers Act, meaning it's strategic for this right here, Section 1550. It specifically says in that clause, in the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter, the President is to report to the Defense Committees the use of regular and irregular forces. So it tells you a timestamp. December the 20th, 2019. It says no later than the first 180 days and every 180 days thereafter. Which means it's unlimited until there's a what? What did Bernie say? Until there's an end to it. There's not an end to it. There hasn't been an end to it. There has not been a termination or a resolution to it. Which means it's still active by law. But you got to compare that and pair that, not compare, but pair that with what President Trump just showed you. December the 2nd, 2025, that none of this dashed by quote-unquote Joe was real. So that means you're coming to the what? We're coming to the close and the validation of everything because we're in a partial continuity government. The continuity government that was invoked December the 7th, 2020, that in Executive Order 13961 was partially revoked on January the 19th, 2025. So we're coming to a close. Everything's coming to a close, right? Because the laws are showing that. The actions are showing that. President Trump telling you on December the 2nd, 2025 that, hey, everything that you saw or thought you saw in this dash was not real, by the way. That's what he's telling you. Wasn't real. That's a straight up validation of my #1 best-selling books. The only books that outline the 45-47. I'm the only one with them. The Midnight Rider Rides Again, Part 1 and 2, and there will be a Part 3 because the finale of 2025 to 2029, which I'm currently writing on that. There's a congressional authorization. It's temporary, which means it's strategic. All right? In that first 180 days, March 27th, 2020, President Trump invoked Title 10, Section 12302 in Executive Order 13912. Called up 1 million reserve components to active duty. 4 days later, April the 1st, 2020, Southern Command announces the launching of the Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation in Venezuela and the Pacific Ocean. What have you been seeing? Where are these strikes? Venezuela and where? The Pacific Ocean. Why is it that I have on records from 2022, 2023, and 2024, early 20, why do I have all the aircraft out in the Pacific Ocean, the Coast Guard, who was also 4 titles were invoked in Executive Order 13912 when President Trump called up 1 million reserve components? 4 Title 14 orders were invoked, which are Coast Guard. Why is it that I have aircraft after aircraft after aircraft all over the Pacific Ocean and also Venezuela and the Caribbean? Why is it? Why aren't they up there now? This has already happened, ladies and gentlemen. I have the records for it. I have the files for it. But I also have the laws and orders that back it. Because that's just how it works. This is how it operates. April the 1st, 2020 is when the actual operation started. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. This April the 1st, no fooling around, will be 6 years that the operation started. And people are just now yelling, complaining, griping, fussing, and calling President Trump all these things of something that started way back here, April the 1st, 2020. On Southern Command's website, you've seen me post it over and over again. Pacific Ocean, Venezuela, shows 22 joint partners. Then, 29 days later, April the 30th, 2020, Executive Order 13919, President Trump invoked Title 10, Section 12304, which is a meaning it's been pre-planned. It's a pre-planned mobilization. If you'll go read some military publications, you'll see that it's a pre-planned mobilization. What does that executive order specifically say? It says this executive order is specifically for what? The Enhanced Counter-Narcotics Operation where? In the Western Hemisphere. You know why President Trump talks about the Monroe Doctrine so much? Because it talks about the what? The Western Hemisphere. What did Bernie Sanders' post talk about? It says Trump wants to reassert and revive the Monroe Doctrine. Why would Bernie be talking about the Monroe Doctrine, the War Powers Resolution Act, all in the same post with Venezuela? Validation, baby. Validation. See, if you'd have been listening all this time and been paying attention to the one person who knows what the heck is going on, me, and all the people that I show you that knows what's going on, the commanders that I'm with, and the other veterans that I'm on with, you would know. You don't need numbers. You just need people who know what the heck's going on. And if you'd have gone and read and sought to read and sought to know what you were reading, which means comprehension, you'd already have this whipped, as the saying is. You'd have it nipped in the bud, as old Barney Fife would say. We're going to nip it in the bud. Well, none of you are nipping. Some of you. You've heard me say the executive document. The executive document at the bottom of Section 1550, there's an executive document there. Now, we know, those of you patriots, the ones who are reading and studying, there are some of you out there who are. All right? This is for your friends and family who aren't. These videos are always for your friends and family who aren't, and for all those that you can share this with. So I do these videos for new people, right? Because that's who we're trying to get on board here. Wake your butts up. Be a part of history. Don't be left behind. All right? The executive document, even though President Trump's already told you that, this dash right here by quote-unquote Joe is null and void, no legal effect, never existed, which is what no legal effect means in Latin. Void ad initio, right? It means never existed. Even though we have that, for the ones still struggling over here, there's an executive document M1550 by quote-unquote Joe. It's a memorandum. And it specifically says a memorandum for what? Secretary of whom? Defense. Which is now will be the Secretary of War. All right. But back then, Secretary of Defense. It specifically says in that executive document on July 19th, 2021, which would have been 5.5 months into what people thought was quote-unquote Joe's presidency, what does it say? I hereby delegate the authority and functions vested in the President of 1550 to the Secretary of Defense. In layman's terms, ladies and gentlemen, and for the people who still can't wrap their mind around the dash at this moment, and that Joe was not real, that was a puppet government, all irregular warfare, all unconventional warfare, all outlined in current laws and orders as we speak. But for those who just can't comprehend that yet, in layman's terms, that was quote-unquote Joe relinquishing all presidential and commander-in-chief authority to the Secretary of War. How sweet it is. Because when you know what that means, then you have to. There's no way you can slice the hair anymore. Now you have to understand what a puppet government is. Now you have to understand what a government in exile is. Now you have to understand the War Powers Resolution Act, because the War Powers Resolution Act had already put that congressional authorization in for President Trump. The whole thing was already authorized at that point. I mean, you know, you hear me say this all the time, and I'm going to say it again. It's that simple. It's that simple. It really is that simple. Because if you're going to cry and yell, war criminal, always violating this, violating that, well, you got to go to the authorization. He already has the authorization. Then you have a post by him. Says no legal effect. You've also heard the terminology occupied territory, capitulation, white flag of surrender, government in exile, puppet government, restoration. President Trump and the media have used all those terms starting on day one. Those are not government anything terms. They're not federal government anything, nothing government related. Every one of those terms are law of war manual and law of land warfare. And the law of land warfare, where it talks about restoration, specifically ties in your military government. When President Trump says we're going to run the government of Venezuela until otherwise, military government. All lawful. All of it's lawful. And your congressional authorization is December the 20th, 2019. Because you got to go back to this. Again, in 1973, this is why President Trump said, be careful what you wish for. In 1973, Congress overrode a presidential veto. Congress overrode Nixon's veto and passed the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973. And they made it to where when a president declares a national emergency, He has 48 hours to alert them on his use of military. He has 60 days and then a 30-day wind-down period. After that 90 total days, Congress must authorize military use. See this grin? It's what you call a shit-eating grin. How is it again that the troops have been operating everywhere in the cities, Texas, election polls, Venezuela, Yemen, but while we're there, Venezuela? How is that again? I mean, again. So see, President Trump, I mean, it looks cheesy because I love sitting here looking like I do, but I might as well just do just like this. I look like a 1990s Vanilla Ice baby, right? 45-47. Congressional authorization. Regular, irregular warfare. Irregular warfare, ladies and gentlemen, that's your unconventional warfare. That's your guerrilla warfare. That's your clandestine operations. That's your covert operations. Venezuela. Real simple. Venezuela. April the 1st, 2020. Present day. What is 90? Let's just use 90 regular days. Let's don't even use 90 business days. Let's just use 90 regular days. Most of these are in business days, but let's just use 90 regular days. Let's include the weekends and all the... What is 90 days on to December the 20th, 2019? Or you could use 90 days after March 27th, 2020, the 1 million reserve components. And you could also use the 90 days onto Executive Order 13919 with the Title 10 12304. What is 90 days after that? And all of your military right now, as we speak, right now, everything in Venezuela, guess where the Title 10 order is? 2020. There's no new Title 10 in place for Venezuela by President Trump as we speak. Every single military that is operating and has operated in Venezuela way back in 2020. Do your freaking West Virginia, Alabama, Mississippi hillbilly math. And I'll show you how dumb, ignorant, stupid, and moronic a libtard is, a Democrat is, and a Republican who wants to act like them. Teach me how to Dougie. Teach me how to Dougie. Teach me how to Trump dance. 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 Woo! I mean, that's how cheesy but awesome it is. That's all it is. White boy dance. White boy dance. White boy. Who said a white boy can't dance? Who said a white boy can't dance? I can dance. I can do the Trump dance because I'm pretty sure that math is that simple that no one can explain except for he's a war criminal. Oh, he's this and he's that. I can show you where the congressional authorization is. And when that congressional authorization is in your face and you want to argue with that, you should be deported. That's if you're going to be that ignorant and that stupid, you should be deported. Because not a single one of you libtards out there, Not a single one of your people abolished one single law. And if you want to still hang on that Joe was real and Joe was really president, which he was not, by laws and orders and by the Constitution, but if you just want to still hang on that, your boy Joe didn't terminate one single Title 10, one single Title 32 by President Trump. He continued 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that are all deporting illegal migrants, enforcing DOGE, taking the Panama Canal back, Chinese, all the Chinese things, anything that was funding the illegal Chinese Communist military, frozen assets, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, who all capitulated. Who have you seen meet with President Trump? Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Tim Cook. They've all capitulated. Then it gets even sweeter. Remember that Executive Order 13692, March the 8th, 2015, by Osama Yo Mama Obama, which invoked the national emergency with Venezuela? Everything that President Trump is doing again is ending all the bullshit from whom? The swamp, right? Osama Yo Mama Obama. All you libtards out there, and if you Republicans want to act like them, then you too. All right, you too. Hashtag you too. All right, we're going to start a new one. Hashtag you too. If you want to look like a moron, you'll be included in that. All right. All these libtards out there saying President Trump is a war criminal, violated the Geneva Convention, violated international law, should be impeached. Did anybody see Maduro? Wasn't he in Nike clothes, which means hashtag just do it, which means what? January the 2nd, Fox News said what? That he's ready to make a deal, and he's wearing Nike, just do it, meaning here comes this portion of the visuals. This is all strategically planned. All right, he's going to cut a deal. He's going to spill all the beans. He's going to have a fair trial. Guess who didn't get a fair trial? Gaddafi didn't get a fair trial, and Bin Laden didn't get a fair trial. Did you not go back and watch Gaddafi when he stood in front of a General Assembly and he called out the past? This was way back 2012, 2011, that region. He stood in front of a General Assembly and he said, are we not going to investigate what the Americans did to Saddam Hussein? They were his friend. Dick Cheney was his friend. He specifically mentioned Dick Cheney. He said the Americans were Saddam's friend until they hung him. What do you think they'll do to us? Woo! Who was under trial? Who was under oath? And she said, what does it matter? They're gone. Hillary Rodham Clinton. What was that all about? That was about Benghazi. Guess where Benghazi is, ladies and gentlemen? Libya. Who was the leader of Libya? Gaddafi. Do you know when Gaddafi was quote-unquote assassinated? October the 20th, 2011. That's right, the speech that he made was before 2011. Gaddafi was quote-unquote assassinated October the 20th, 2011. Do you know when Bin Laden was killed in Pakistan? May the 2nd, 2011. So we know for a fact that Obama and Hillary and Joe all bragged about killing and getting Osama bin Laden May the 2nd, 2011. Gaddafi died after bin Laden assassinated, quote unquote. Do you know who does not have an entry in the War Powers Resolution Act that all these libtards are yelling about, that President Trump is a war criminal, violated this, violated international law, violated. You know who doesn't have an entry in the War Powers Resolution Act? Osama, yo mama, Obama. Multiple military actions under Obama. Nowhere in the War Powers Resolution Act. Do you know how Venezuela ties in to all this? The Maduro regime, Obama, Joe, Hillary, Bush, Smartmatic, and Dominion voting systems. Executive Order 13848 with the national emergency declared September the 12th, 2018 by President Donald John Trump that quote-unquote Joe continued 4 years in a row. Why would quote-unquote Joe continue an executive order for election interference when it ties in and is enforcing everything? In 2018, Mad Dog Mattis, under President Donald John Trump, invoked Title 32 with Title 32 funding for all the National Guard cybersecurity teams at the election polls in November 2018, November 2020. They were also at the polls November 2022 and November 2024. There was no termination of that Title 32 funding by quote-unquote Joe and a order by quote-unquote Joe. Those are not continuation orders. Go back to your 60 and 30 days, your 90 total days in congressional authorization. That's why military orders are not continuation orders. The National Guard cybersecurity teams have been at every election active since 2018 under a 2018 Title 32 order. Be careful what you wish for. Obama does not have an entry in the War Powers Act. Now, take your happy rear ends over to Google and type in supremecourt.gov. Click on the actual link that takes you over there. When you see search dockets, type in the search bar 23-939. Enter. It will show you a link. Click on that link. On March 24th, March the 19th, 2024. Got the 24 in my head. Almost 2 years ago. Hard to comprehend. Almost 2 years ago. There's a Supreme Court docket case in there. And it specifically said, and there's no resolution yet, it just tells the three amici curiae involved. One of those is Keith Kellogg. Who was around President Trump all the time? Who does he praise all the time? Who did he say specifically, he's been with me before all of this? Keith Kellogg. Three amici curiae. The question was posed, can a president order SEAL Team 6 to commit murder and assassination of a political rival? The three amici curiae, who are all senior leaders, generals, colonels, etc. It says multiple different things. What does it say? Astounding and astounding? No. It says any military officer who carries out such an order committed the gravest of crimes, murder. Woo! Who does not have an entry in the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973, the most recent? Osama, yo mama, Obama. dance, do the Trump dance, do the Trump dance, do the Trump dance. Twerk it a little bit. Twerk it a little bit. Yeah, twerk it. You want to call my boy a war criminal? You want to call him a criminal? Strategically planned, baby. All strategically planned. 45-47, the whole thing's in operation. And you better be lucky that you have people in this nation who let you people whine, complain, gripe, and fuss. Because if I was a commander-in-chief, your ass would be deported for calling anyone a war criminal when there's a congressional authorization. You want to say the Constitution out of your mouth. You want to say anything to do with congressional authorization, and you don't even know there's a congressional authorization. You know how dumb you sound? I love this stuff, man. These people out there yelling, he needs congressional authorization. He has it, you morons. I love this stuff more than I love life, just about. It's fun to be right, ain't it? It ain't about being right, but it's fun when you are, ain't it? Oh, it feels so good. Quote-unquote Joe continued 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that are doing all those things. President Trump, the 8 wars that he's ending were all in executive orders and national emergencies by Osama all the way back to Jimmy Carter. There's a congressional authorization in place. So you might want to know those things before you go spew off a bunch of ignorance out there, because it's really that simple. You got to know where to look and know how to apply it. And when you know where to look and know how to apply it, you can't do nothing but get up and twerk your little behinds. And whatever you're sipping on, I'm sipping on coffee right here. This is real coffee. But if you're sipping on something else, then cheers to you, baby. Woo! Just that simple. So, all you got to do is check out the rest of my accounts, because I break down all these other things. When you got questions about, there's nothing I haven't covered. Every one of your questions, I have somewhere, somehow, some way on a podcast. All right? You can go to my Linktree, linktr.ee/1776 Nation. Go to my Rumble page, all right, and find all my videos on there. I break down everything. I break down each year, each segment, chronological order. My books are the only books out there that talk about the 45-47 in a chronological order. #1 bestsellers, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, Part 1, Part 2. All right, if you want them signed, you got to come through me. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, it's just me who operates my books on my end. When you order T-shirts with it, I have one other person who does that. There's 2 of us, so we're a two-man team, all right, but separate. All right, so it takes a little time for inventory and all those things like that. So when you order, be sure to read the email that's sent to you that says we have a 2 to 3 week turnaround if you come through me. If you don't want to wait that long, go through Amazon, because Amazon and Bezos did what, baby? Capitulated to President Trump. Executive Order 13959, November the 12th, 2020. All right? Real simple. Amazon's clear. President Trump has a store on Amazon now, so don't be afraid to order from Amazon. All right? Amazon, the books are there. They'll get there to you a lot quicker. I just can't sign those. All right, so my official websites are rattletrap1776.com, DerrickJohnsonCountry.com, thedocuments.info. Now, those are dated. I haven't updated them since 2022, but those are what my books stem from, thedocuments.info. Those were notes that I jotted down of what was going on from 2016 to up to that date, 2022. But they were published January 2021, where I told you, hey, military's in control, nothing to worry about, this is what you're witnessing, this is what you saw, this is what this is, by laws and orders. All right, so they're still up. I have a lot of the aircraft that was operating back then on there. You can scroll for days on there to see what aircraft were where, certain unique and different aircraft that wouldn't have just been where they were unless there was an operation taking place, like certain kind of helicopters like India in New York. What was an Indian aircraft, military helicopter doing in rural New York flying around unless we were under a what? Military operation, military government, military occupation. It's all part of Dwight D. Eisenhower's original plan. All right, that portion, establishing military into certain positions after a continuity government. And that's what you're witnessing, that's what you're watching. It's all in those books, and I'll have more in the third book when I get it done, which it'll probably be around, obviously, 2028, 2029, because it's going to be the big finale of what you've been watching, all right, and documenting everything up to that point. So I'm the only one with them, baby, and that's all you need. You have all your validation. You have it. All right, Venezuela, President Trump's ending all the drama, ending all the propaganda, ending all the diplomacy by the swamp, the deep state, the cabal. So Republicans, conservatives, if you call yourself a Republican, conservative, or a patriot, you better start looking like it and acting like it. All right, don't look like a Democrat. Don't look like a libtard. All right, President Trump knows what he's doing. He's the face of this operation. He signed off on this a long time ago, long before you even knew he was running for president. He signed up for this, signed on for this, and knew the beginning, the middle, the end. And he specifically told you that Memorial Day 2025 and July the 4th, 2026 are markers. And he said we will celebrate every single day after July 4th, 2026. What are you seeing on football fields already? The big rollout of 250. All these entities, everybody's been playing a part, playing a role. And he told you we're going to have celebrations, sports celebrations every single day after July the 4th, 2020. Going to have all these competitions and different things, bringing people together. All right? But you can already know this if you'll get your head in the game and know what you're supposed to know by laws and orders. You could have already known that Venezuela was coming if you'd have known what you can know. No one who did not capitulate from 2017 to 2021 and who was in executive order with a national emergency declared. It's really that simple. So, we'll see you guys soon.